This is Tim.
This is Jonathan.
Welcome to The Average, where watching movies is just the beginning. We don't break them down scene by scene.
Nope, we dig into what makes them tick. Script, acting, direction, score.
And everything that brings a film to life, because movies aren't just something you watch, they're something you feel.
And that feeling, it's different for everyone. Your background, your experiences, it all changes how a movie lands.
That's why we love diving into those differences, whether it's a fresh blockbuster, an underground cult classic, or something totally unexpected. We're here to break it all down.
And this time we've got a special guest, Adam, the composer behind our 13 Nights of Halloween themes.
It's great to have you with us tonight, Adam.
Howdy, howdy. I'm so excited to be here to talk about a very amazing and pretty much classic cult film at this point. So
yeah, this was a movie you recommended, so I've never seen it before that, so this is going to be a fun conversation.
Oh yes, it is a fantastic film.
So
Tim, jeez,
it's always been on my list. Well, I'll get into it. I saw pieces of it in music class in high school.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
So saw pieces of it.
Respect to that teacher.
So as always, we want you, the listener, or if you're on YouTube, the viewer, to be part of the conversation. We score movies our way, and you can too. Vote using one of the 3 different rating methods that can be found on our Instagram. Someday we'll have a website, but that's a ways down the road.
Either way, though, more movies, more opinions, and more perspectives, making the discussion even better.
Before we dive in, make sure to like this episode, drop your score in the comments, and subscribe wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And tonight, we're on a mission from God, because we're talking about the Blues Brothers.
This 1980 classic blends comedy, music, and absolute chaos in one of the most iconic films of all time.
It's directed by John Landis, who we actually mentioned him kind of 2 episodes ago in The Wolfman, because he directed An American Werewolf in London. I get Werewolf in Paris and London mixed up all the time. But this was his movie directly before that. So John Landis starring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd as Jake and Elwood Blues. 2 guys in black suits, sunglasses, and a whole lot of trouble.
The setup is simple. They need to save the orphanage that they grew up in by putting their old band back together.
Sounds easy, right? Except they've got Illinois Nazis, a country western band, the entire Chicago police force, and even a vengeful Carrie Fisher trying to take them down.
And somehow, between all the car chases and property destruction, this movie also manages to be one of the greatest musical comedies ever made.
With legendary performances from Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, and more, The Blues Brothers is as much a love letter to soul and blues as it is an off-the-rails comedy.
But does it still hold up? Does the blend of absurdity, action, and music work as well today as it did back then in 1980?
And more importantly, did they really need to crash that many cars?
We're about to find out. Let's jump into Blues Brothers. Yes, they needed all of those car crashes. They needed all of them. Anyways,
the car crashes. I was gonna bring it up in special effects, but they set a record at that time for the most crashed cars in a movie.
Yeah,
it was kind of surprising.
Chicago
so diving into the story. Yes. Adam, where would you like to fall in this? Do you want Jonathan to take the lead, you go in the middle, and then I'll sandwich it at the end? So kicking off the story, Jonathan, you want to talk a little bit about this story?
Yeah, man. So for me, like I saw this back in the 80s, you know, because I was born in 83. So I grew up watching this, seeing it on TV all the time and never got tired of this movie, man. But, you know, I haven't seen it in a long time. So rewatching it now, it's like, oh, yeah, nostalgia and like, oh, man, it's just so much goodness. But I don't know about you guys, but I watched the unrated version. So there was a bit more. There was a little. I think there was like an extra like 13 to 20 minutes added on. I think it was like 2 hours, 20 minutes or something. But you get extended scenes of like a lot of different stuff, which is fantastic. But as far as story goes, though, you don't get really any kind of stories hardly like this, where you got someone who's coming out of jail. As far as the comedy goes, gets out of jail, decides to go on this huge mission. Like seeing the Holy Spirit and being like, oh my gosh, this is my mission. This is what I got to do, and trying to save an orphanage. You don't, I mean, I know there's been some kind of like stuff that's been similar to like that over time, but you don't see hardly anything like that. And back then that was such a crazy story, a crazy way to start out the story, two brothers. Dude, it's creepy.
Yeah, oh my God.
But it's so cool. Kathleen Freeman as the Penguin. Oh man, dude, Penguin, she was pretty gnarly. But like the doors and all this, yeah, we'll get to that. But just the hijinks and like the crazy amounts of like the different characters that they come across. That it makes you feel very Rat Race almost, kind of. If you've ever seen Rat Race movies, just a lot of slapstick, a lot of cool stuff, but like you got other weird little side stories, other things blended in. I love this movie so much just because of the comedic factor and just the chaos itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Like this is my favorite movie of all time. Like it even tops Christopher Nolan's masterpieces. But for me, it's the like the quotability of the film. Like literally every single scene, I would say, has like a quote that you can, kind of say even now, like, going from the start of the movie and the start of the podcast too. And Tim was like, we're on a mission from God. It's like, literally, that's like one of the first scenes of the film after after the jail scene. So, and then you just keep going and there's so many different quotes that I find it so enjoyable on top of the music and everything. So,
yeah. So the story of this one, I knew nothing about this movie. I went in blind, but this is a movie that has always been like you need to see this movie. So for some reason, it wasn't real high on my list. I don't want to say I love blues music because I love blues music, but I couldn't tell you a blues artist. Like, I'm not that kind of love blues music. I love when rock music gets real bluesy. I can tell you that. I'm like, yeah, that's good stuff. But I love all of the artists and musicians that are in this movie. They're the classics. Just incredible people in this movie. For me, the story is super loose. It's a very loose story. And it made a ton of sense when I'm reading about it after watching. So, Jonathan, I watched the director's cut first, and that was a mistake.
Really?
Yeah. So for me, being my first time seeing the film, watching the director's cut was a mistake. I didn't finish it. So I was bored. And I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you. I don't know if I wasn't in the right headspace, if I just needed to go to bed. I don't know what it was. But I was super bored, didn't even finish it. And the next day I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch the theatrical cut. And I'm watching the theatrical cut going like, I swear this wasn't even in the director's cut. I swear this scene was alternate in the other cut. I swear it's a different movie. And going back, I don't think it is, but I was in a better headspace, I guess. I guess it was much better theatrical cut. The pacing felt much better for me. And I'm sure as I watched that theatrical cut, if that's what I had fallen in love with, the director's cut would be better. Because I started with the director's cut, I was bored the first time. So, going back, yeah, I know. But going back, I got into the theatrical cut way easier, and I think it was a lot of the director's cut added at the beginning of the film, and so that definitely slowed that pacing down. But getting into theatrical cut, I see where this was based on an SNL sketch, because kind of what Adam was saying, you get these quotable lines, and it felt like jumping from SNL sketch to SNL sketch with this loosely threaded story as to why this is happening. And that's not necessarily bad. It just, I wouldn't say it's a super story-driven movie. The story's there. The story's good. But at times, my first watch, I forgot that they were doing this to get money for the orphanage. I just thought...
Damn, property taxes.
Yeah, I forgot that. Also, all around in our old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
So, good old Cook County.
Yeah, Mount Prospect police car. Or retired, excuse me.
And then I love opening with the Joliet prison, which is now abandoned, I believe.
Oh wow!
And I believe the women's prison is abandoned. I don't know if the actual one. I don't know.
Because I follow some YouTube paranormal investigators, and they've been to the Joliet prison and it's abandoned and supposedly haunted. So it was kind of cool to see the exterior of some of the buildings at the beginning and like, hey, I've seen that now. 50 years after this movie was made, and 45. But yeah. So, anyways, the story. Yeah, I'm so good at math. I thought the story was super loose, but that's not really an insult to a movie like this. I think this is a different breed of movie. You mentioned Rat Race. It reminded me a lot of, if I go back older than this movie, it's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Have you ever seen that one?
I've seen like small clips of it. I haven't actually watched this.
I think it's from the 60s or 70s. But it's a comedy where this guy like dies at the side of the road, and all the people there who are witnessed it, he says like, my fortune's buried under this. And then they all just race to that location. But the movie's like 2.5, 3 hours long. Whoa. And it breaks my rule for comedy, which this one does too. Like, I don't think comedy should be over 2 hours.
Yeah.
But anyways, it reminded me of that, where it's kind of going from set piece to set piece, scene to scene, kind of like SNL sketch to SNL sketch. So that made a lot of sense for me. So for scores, don't come down on me too hard. I gave the story for this a 3. The story is a 3. It's a good story. It's a good story.
I also said it was a 3 because I also thought, like it could be better. Like I've watched better films with like stories that I leave the theater, or I close my laptop or whatever. I'm like, whoa, and Blues Brothers isn't it,
Well, fine. Be that way about it. Yeah. I gave it a 4. I love the absurdity of it. I love some of the inconsistencies in certain things. And now that I watched the unrated version versus the regular, like, so much extra. I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'll sit on my high horse at a 4. Yeah.
Good. You're allowed to. All right. So into the character then. So Adam, we always kind of, I do it a little bit differently than some people. Some people rate this on if the characters are good. I kind of rate it on if the characters go on a personal journey of like discovery or growth, a character arc. So it's up to you how you viewed this one. But Jonathan, what do you think of characters?
Just insanity, dude. Like Jake and Elwood, they're kind of like weird polar opposites. How to say it? So Jake, he's got like that kind of con man aspect to it, but he's like really sly, but kind of smooth. And Elwood is just like really quiet, but he's like got stuff going on. You see him throughout the film, kind of like grabbing certain things and doing this and that, and like prepping. Like he knows how to do all these like little mischievous things and criminal little things, And it's kind of funny, So you got your scammer, and you got the guy who does like all the fine work parts, and assembly, whatever. It's kind of like, and just like them talking about trying to be straight, and like doing things right, and like trying to help, the orphanage. Like it's crazy how Elwood just kind of like goes with it. He doesn't really have any revelation, but he believes in his brother and wants to see him, really do something to help the church and redeem himself. And then seeing Jake being like, oh crap, like there's a higher power, and like feeling that presence, and him just being like, oh my God, and like really putting effort into it while still trying to like not do too much illegal stuff, but still seemingly coming out on top at the end, even though they end up in jail.
Yeah, I like how you said try not to do illegal stuff. Like, it is just so hard for these two to not do illegal stuff.
It was pretty messed up. But aside from that, like the rest of the guys in the band, and how they're just like, man, I don't know. I'm so fishy about this, on the fence. But they still try to give him a shot. And then like, the other weird characters, man. Carrie Fisher, like she's not even named. She doesn't even have an actual like character name. She's just like the stalker chick. But like all the bits of you seeing her like chasing them down is awesome.
Wasn't it an ex of not John.
Jake's, yeah.
Jake.
Yeah. It was, Jake's ex, and they were supposed to get married. And you could tell by the names of the people she's talking about, like sounds like some like Italian mob boss kind of stuff going down. And
based on the arsenal.
Daddy's girl with the mafia, she's got the loadout, rocket launchers and all the crazy stuff, and then just getting kind of hosed at the end by Jake with an apology and a begging, dude. It was so rad. I just like, it's just shameful, but it worked. Whatever, because I'm getting shot. Hooray! And then just all the other weird silent characters, like John Candy as the Department of Corrections guy, and like all the other like random cameo appearances you get through it. It's cool. I loved it.
I'm always excited to see John Candy. I love John Candy movies.
I know, dude. I miss John Candy too. I wish he passed away so early on. We could have so many more awesome movies with him. Uncle Buck.
This was our second one with Candy and Aykroyd, because we had our summer vacation. The Great Outdoors.
Yep.
Yep.
Like I said, I still want to watch I can't remember the name of it right offhand right now, but it's the one where it's John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, and Chevy Chase, Demi Moore, and it's got Digital Underground in it. It's like they get stuck like out in the boonies, and like county judge is like really weird old decrepit man, junkyard, and like weird twisted kids. John Candy plays two characters in that movie.
Is that Nothing But Trouble?
Yes, that's it. Nothing But Trouble. I would love for us to do an episode on that one.
I just
kind of keep that John Candy, streak going there. Oh, dude. But yeah, there's just a lot of goodness, man. And between other little bit characters, there's a lot of fill there, man. And the characters as musical artists, within the film too. Dude, there's so many people now. It's like these have been like most iconic people in music for their time, and they have so much of an amazing history in music, and like seeing them way back then, it's like, that's awesome. Seeing Aretha Franklin way back then, I was like, dude, smoking. All right. Yes. I was like, damn, she looking good, bro. Like, okay.
Yeah. Adam.
That's me for character I talked about.
All right. So for me, for like character, I kind of did it that like, how did they, progress through the film, or like, how did they develop through the film? Right. Because you start at the jail or the prison, and then you like keep, moving on. And so for Jake and Elwood, like Jonathan said, like, Elwood is pretty much following Jake, like in the film, and just like trying to support his brother and everything. But I would say the supporting actors or like musicians are also play like, a big role in supporting Jake and Elwood in the film. Like, there would be the story would fall apart if none of the other musical acts, or, like the crazy dancing in front of the record shop or things like that. If
that's one of my favorite musical numbers in the movie.
Like,
this movie is filled with them, but I love that one particularly.
Yes. And like, and they like go through, and it has also like dipping into the story, like it has the different scenes that like walk you through that. It's like, this is a journey. This is not just like a, like cut and dry kind of thing. So like it takes you from Calumet City to, to downtown, and then to the Palace Hotel ballroom. That was out of order, but
Yeah.
it's like, and so that develops those two characters, starting with the church scene and then going, not church scene, starting with the orphanage and going church scene and then things like that. It develops the characters more like with the story, if that makes sense, instead of like just the character being like, hey, this is me. And it's like a backstory to them. Like the story, you find out little bits and pieces. And so then like they just build on top of that saying like, oh, hey, I didn't know that Jake could like sing like this until, they got to the Palace Hotel ballroom. Like, and then you realize that, they were like the stuff before they went to jail kind of thing, and then, so that's like with the main characters that it just like develops and it kept me hooked the numerous times that I watched the film, that like it just kept developing. And then like the supporting characters, they have a good, little help in the film too, which provides the extra character arc. I'm talking in circles, but that's okay.
you're
that's
okay.
To do on a favorite film,
This is your movie. Go for it. I was sounded like this when I did The Substance, so it's all right. So I have a question for you two, knowing this movie a little bit better than me.
Okay.
I had to pick it up the second time. Jake was in prison for robbing a bank or a gas station?
Yeah, he'd robbed a gas station or some such in order to try
a business.
He did that to pay the band.
I don't think it was to pay the band. I think it was to pay for something for the band. I guess they had like a huge bill or something, and was just trying to like keep them covered so they could do their thing. And
because watching it, I was trying to figure out. The first time I was like, do they ever say why he's in prison? And I apparently missed it. And then the second time I was like, okay. So I at first thought he robbed the gas station or whatever it was he robbed to pay the band for their performance because they didn't get paid. And so I was under the impression that even though he robbed a place, he was doing it for altruistic purposes. But maybe that wasn't the case. But I do like that line when he's with the penguin, as they call the nun at the orphanage. When he's sitting there and she's like, I need $5,000. And he's like, no problem. I'll have it to you tomorrow. And she's like, no, not illegal. Don't get it illegally. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good the next time. So in a way, that is his character arc of this film, is that he starts off, he didn't learn in prison. He's ready to do it the exact same thing he did to get in there to help this orphanage. Again, I was under the impression, he's helping the orphanage like he helped his band. It was altruistic. But he decides he's going to do this the right way. Even if there's a lot of ends justify the means thrown in there along the way, they're going to raise the money, even if it means them literally stealing the show from that band at the bar in the saloon. They pretend to be that band to get the money, but then they end up
Country Bunker.
But then they end up drinking $100 more than they were being paid, and so they're out the money. I love that.
It's a pitfall. It's a pitfall in showbiz.
What Adam said is this movie jumps all over the place. You go from place to place. So Bob's Country Bunker was in Kokomo, Indiana. Another place that I lived. So that is where I spent like the first 17 years of my life was in Kokomo, Indiana. And then I moved out of there. Bob's Country Bunker is not a real place in Kokomo, unfortunately. But I still thought it was cool. The people that they showed in the bar, very much what I remember people from Kokomo being like. So that should tell you something about that. But anyways, I digress on that. So I do see a little bit of a character arc in trying to get this money the proper way. Putting the band back together, there's really not that much of a growth as in maturing, and they're basically the same dudes they were at the beginning. There's just that little bit of like, hey, I'm not going to rob a place this time. to get the money. And they do some good along the way while causing millions of dollars worth of damage everywhere
Mass
they go.
mountain destruction.
Yes.
So,
Oh my gosh.
so
Absurd
for me,
amounts.
I gave it a 3 on the character. It's a good character arc. It's not a great one. I'll say that because I don't think this movie's about character growth. I
Not so
don't
much,
think that's not what this movie's about. And so that's okay. I actually think we're probably past my 2 lowest scores at that point. So on to the rest of it. But I was a 3.
Also, like, just adding to that, that's why I think it's more of like a cult classic. Like, yeah, it got popular, it did well, like in the box office, but like, you know, people still considering it, you know, like a good comedy or good musical, I think is more of the stuff that happens other than the characters, you know, like the music, the little like tidbits.
Cameo.
Yeah, the cameos, the you know, gluing the gas pedal to the floor. Like, you remember things like that, the little tiny things, rather than like, you know, like a big story that leaves you, you know, probably hanging at the end of the film, you know?
Yeah. No, I remember things more like just what you're saying. While you were saying that, I just remember when the phone booth blows up and he's like there and he's like, there's like $7 and change here. Just little things like that is what I remember.
Look at the bright side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tim, you said you scored a 3.
Yep.
Okay, where are you at, Adam?
3.
Also, okay. Well, I'm sitting on my horse again. I'm going 4.
Do it.
They had a goal. They were on a mission. They completed the mission. Even though they went to jail, they still got the band back together, and they got them a record deal and got them some fame and notoriety, which, you know, is pretty awesome thing. So I say kudos to them on that. Take that 4, boys.
That's true. That's true.
Go, my guys.
Well, actually,
Making that prison music, rock and roll. Yeah.
At the end, so when Jake and Elwood are escaping, is that when they're like, I'll give you what X number of dollars, and Jake says, give it to the band?
Yeah, he says, like, take $1,400, give it to Ray's Music Depot or Music Shop, whatever, to pay for all the instruments and all the equipment and everything, and then to give the rest to the band. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Good dude. I'll come up. I'll give it a 4 because that's a big moment for him. I'll come up.
He's looking out for his buddies and still making sure that even though they stuck with him, they still got their ends, you know, to justify going out on this mission with him. So,
yep, that is good. All right, so we're on to the biggest category for this film.
Yes.
Music
and sound design, baby.
Music and sound design.
Dude, there's a lot of iconic music in this film and a lot of amazing artists. Man, seeing John Lee Hooker playing out in the street in just, you know, downtown Chicago, surrounded by people in the neighborhood, you know, when they get to the cafe for Aretha Franklin's place when they're going to pick up Mac and Blue. Oh man, like it's just cool neighborhood scenes like that, you know, and just seeing people out hanging out doing stuff in place. You know, you don't see that too often anymore, especially since the pandemic, you know, so it kind of gives you a little nostalgia to way back when, you know, people were a little more loose, a little more comfortable out in public and having a little more good time out there and spreading good vibes. So yeah, hearing him, Aretha Franklin talking about respect. And but for me, though, the top of all the music in this movie, I think, was Curtis when he opens the show for the guys at the Palace Ballroom. Cab Calloway.
Yeah,
he grew up with him at the orphanage, and him doing Minnie the Moocher was awesome. It was like one of the most transformative moments of the movie because you get this change of perspective and the illusion of everything and showmanship because they're in just like regular clothes and boom, out of nowhere, magic. And they're like the big band. He's got the nice suit. In his mind, it's showtime and he's going for gold, bro. And the performance that he gives on that is epic to me. So that's that I'm just getting like high ratings all day all over that, aside from the rest of the music in the film. And just sound design is on a whole other thing with all of the car crashes that you hear, like a lot of screeching tires. Like that's a lot of placement for all that kind of stuff in there when it comes to sound design. But I don't want to gab on too much. I just want to give my 2 piece on that and make sure Cab Calloway got his due for that. Take it away, Adam. What you guys say about some music action?
All right. Yeah. I already go from the bat that my score was a 5 or was a 5 on the scale.
Just get that out of the way.
Yes, out of the
I
way.
agree. I agree, and I'll say yes. I'm a 5 as well. So thank you, sir.
So, going through the songs, like you can, look up the soundtrack and you get the pretty much all the main songs they use in the film. Like She Caught the Katy, the Peter Gunn theme, which to me is iconic, that it's sneaking around when they were sneaking in the neighborhood and then through the mall that they wrecked, and then Everybody Needs Somebody to Love, and my, of course, favorite piece, Minnie the Moocher. Those are all they all are staples in the film, and the different scenes that song comes on and you're like, okay, great. This is this scene. I remember which songs are from which scenes, and that's what I really enjoy out of it. On top of that, I think all the songs are, or most of them are covers of the originals. So Aretha Franklin's Think, she recorded that back in the 60s, 70s. Probably will get hated on that, but then she re-recorded it a little faster for the Blues Brothers film. And then Cab Calloway, same thing. That original songs from the 40s.
That song has definitely been around for a while. Yeah.
And so then he re-recorded that song, and there. And then there's the Jailhouse Rock that was recorded too. I'm surprised they didn't use some of their SNL stuff that they did, but they have a separate album on that. But but all in all, each song is pretty much iconic in the film. But I have one little gripe that John Lee Hooker does not have his own song on the soundtrack. That was, should be. I don't.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, James Brown and the Cleveland James Choir apparently has a song, and that's in the church.
Yeah.
I think it was just a little accent song, but still, I remember that too. Bow wow wow wow,
How.
Yeah, and how like that. You remember that, and that was right before the Ray Charles scene, or right after one of those two. I need to scratch my brain a little, but yeah, all in all, very deserving of a 5 for the score. All top notch, very memorable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm a 5 too. I couldn't not be a 5 for this. So between the legends who are actually in the movie, and like you mentioned, I pulled it up because I was curious. I wanted to mention these as well. Just other songs that are in this movie, not performed in the movie, just accent music. There's Elmore James, Otis Redding, Salvador Despacito, Billy Joel. John Lee Hooker does have 2 background where we just get little clips. Hank Williams, Fats Domino. This movie is stacked when it comes to music. And all of these performances, all of these songs, as you guys have already said. But the other thing that I go to and to give this a 5, does it have a theme that is recognizable? Yeah, it does. They have the Blues Brothers theme, and it plays frequently throughout the film, that if you were to hear it, I would know it anywhere. It kind of sounds like a DVD, like an old school DVD menu before you hit play. Yeah. It's a loop that kind of sounds like that. But yeah, it does. It's a 5 easily for me. The theme, I don't know if I have it written here. How am I going to miss that?
Well, while you figure it, I also want to say, I didn't want to say because I want to say too many things, give you guys other things to talk about.
No, go ahead.
Sweet Home Chicago.
Oh, yes.
You hear that song, Sweet Home Chicago. That's a song everybody should know, even if you're not from Illinois or even close by. That's such a super, super well-known song. You cannot ignore that. And then just like Ray Charles as well, with song like with his performance and singing when they were doing like you were talking about with the dancing scene outside. That man, Ray Charles, dude, kicking ass, dude.
I love Ray Charles. I love Ray Charles. And then seeing him in this movie was that much better. That is actually the scene that I saw in my music class. They showed us the Ray Charles stuff. So
did they show you him shooting at children? You know, just trying to shoot
they
children.
I don't remember that part. Don't remember that part. But I do remember the rest of that version. No, I remember. So my first experience with this movie, for those, if you kept up with the show, I wasn't allowed to watch a whole lot of stuff growing up. And I remember coming home and saying like, oh, our teacher showed us Blues Brothers. And my mom just going, what? Like, you watched that in school? That movie's rated R. You know? Like, it's just a lot of language now. Like, and it's not even a lot of language. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, so I remember it being as one of those movies that I wasn't allowed to watch, which is part of why it took me so long to get around to watch it. But yeah, so we're 5s on music. Do we have more to add to the music? We cover it.
I think I'm good on music.
I just also like Rawhide, for example. I just love that they played Rawhide, and then the I think theme from Rawhide actually has both songs in it, but like, you know, they just kept looping it, and they just kept throwing. Like they went from the unhappy throws to the we're just gonna throw because we're happy, and then like they just kept throwing it. That meaning the used beer bottles.
Yes. So
actually,
that scene makes me wonder. I recently watched. Dang it, I'm losing my train of thought. It was a movie about a bouncer. Roadhouse. I recently watched the original Roadhouse movie. And did most bars in the 80s just have bands that perform behind cages? Because that was in Roadhouse too. And then it's in this one. I was like, were bars that rowdy back then?
Some places, bro. Some places.
Cages. I was like, man. So when I saw them in the cage, I was like, I saw Roadhouse. I know what's going on. Yeah, this is a rowdy bar.
Yeah, like I didn't know any of like the references. When I first watched the film, I watched it with my family when I was like 8. You know, so like I got none of the references or none of the songs. I was just like, oh, hey, a film that like my, parents are watching pretty much. And then I like rewatched it every now and then. And I started, getting more of the references, and I'm like, oh, I know who Aretha Franklin is. Oh, great. Then like I knew the significance of that. Oh, I know who Ray Charles is now. It's significant. So like the music, and then like also like the story, like I kept discovering new things as I was watching, the more times that I watched it, so just wanted to add that.
That's good. Yeah. When going back to Rawhide, when he sees the whip starts cracking it, because of that, when I saw it as a kid, I actually like grabbed a belt and like go out in the backyard, like trying to learn how to do that too. How to like crack like a whip. Not something a kid should be doing, but I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that.
So my first bout of college, in Kentucky, we had a green in the center of our school. And, that was in springtime. People were out there in their picnics, whatever, and the green being lovey-dovey. But I actually had a guy in my dorm who had a whip, and he would go out to the green and just crack it. And he would just be out there, and he'd have a fedora hat on and a leather jacket. I'm not kidding. And he would just stand out there in the green and crack his whip. And you would just catch him doing it random hours throughout the day. That's what he did. He didn't really talk to many people. He was just out there cracking that whip. I was like, he was a character. I wonder what he's up to now. I wonder what he's doing.
Yeah.
Bubble, don't get in my bubble.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Anyways, the editing and special effects.
There's not too much to really say as far as special effects goes in this film. This is like really, really more of a practical effects kind of thing. So it's nothing, as advanced as what we have today by far, but not by a long shot. I liked a lot of
the practical makes it so much better for me, though.
Some of it's crazy though. Some of it's like really crazy, and it's kind of absurd again with some of those effects. Like when Carrie Fisher like stalks them to the hotel for single men or whatever, and she pulls out that rocket launcher and blows out the entire upper entryway to the hotel, and it's like holy crap! And they're just like, oh, okay, cool, and they just walk in, pull out the broken doors, and walk in. It's like, dude, what the hell? Oh man! And then
can I touch on that while you're there?
Yeah,
because I didn't bring it up in story. I might bring it up in script or performance. One of my favorite like running gags in this movie is the fact that they have that door blown up. They have the room blown up. They're constantly attacked, and they never once question any of it. They get up, they brush the brick dust off their shoulders, and they go, hey, it's 9 o'clock. We got to get to work. But no one is like, why was that I just blown up? Nobody questions that. Nobody wonders what happened. They just move on. The building is down. Keep going with on about your day. Mm-hmm. So the first time it was a little jarring. I'm like, why are they not concerned that this lady just shot a bazooka over their shoulders at this door?
Oh, and if you look behind you, Tim, it's boom, there it goes. As we're talking about it, I love it. So and there goes Holy, because she sets off her bombs in the basement and blows the whole freaking building down.
So I love that scene and the use of a miniature building to blow up in that scene. That scene is so well done. Well done.
And then like them crawling out of the brick being like, oh yeah. Like, what, dude? This is insane.
Literally stands up, dusts himself off and goes, it's 9 a.m. We got to get to work.
Yeah, their sunglasses.
I was like, what the hell, bro? There's just so much crazy and like all the random stuff that they do in there. But I'd say that was probably my favorite of as far as effects go. The editing, like I said, I watched the unrated version, so there's a little more scenes for me. In the unrated, you get longer music performances. So what you saw with John Lee Hooker out on the street, you got a short cut of that. Yeah. Unrated version, I got to see much longer cut, like at least a few more minutes of him playing out there in the street, which I thought was cool. So the way they edited it for the unrated version with some more of those extended scenes and longer performances, I thought really gave more feel and feeling to the movie. So I thought that was really nice. But the editing, as far as like the car chase scene towards the end, the way they cut those scenes together, the angles of all that, holy cow, dude. Yeah. Man, down there, Lower Wacker, cutting around through the city and everything, getting to the assessor's office. Everything was just nuts in that. I like the way they put it together.
Also, not for a minute do I believe that even I know this came out in the 80s, which means they probably filmed it in 78 or 79. Not for a second do I believe that the streets of Chicago were that empty in 1979.
Oh, God, no. You kidding me, dude? There would have been way more people out there getting smashed into and getting just demolished by the cars running around.
They're doing that car chase and
destruction.
Like, that is a ghost town. What is going on?
Yeah.
All right,
especially like on Lower Wacker. Oh my gosh! Like oh my gosh,
dude, it made me nervous watching them drive through those spaces. Like, oh my god, they're gonna hit a pillar. They're gonna hit a pillar. They're gonna hit a pillar. Oh my god, hit a pillar.
Yeah, so like under the L. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But for the special effects, like getting back to the Palace Hotel Ballroom as an example, like I loved touching on what Jonathan said about the when Cap Calloway spins around and they go from ragtag like street clothes to like nice white gowns, pretty much like
pimped out big band.
Like that edit, like I still remember that, like after watching it and taking it all in. Like that's one of like the little things on top of the car scene and things like that. like going to more scenes, you have even like the lighting in the background of the jail scene when like they start the song and there's just like Jake standing in the door, and it's just, you have the edit of that where it's just like boom of Jake and then boom Elwood, and so like it's an introduction there that it's just in your face with the jazz going. So like, you know, very thought out in my opinion. And then like, you know, going to the effects, it was more practical. Like I rated it this as a solid like 4, mostly because it wasn't, you know, super hardcore like the Marvel movies or like, you know, other things like that where it's just blown out of proportion. But in that sense, but it's blown out of proportion for the fact that you have hundreds of police cars that just get destroyed trying to follow a
police force.
Yes, and then you have the army, the National Guard, you have like everybody following them to the office. And then on top of that, when the Illinois Nazis are he like shifts it into reverse, right? And then and then they like backflip.
The magical reverse flip over turnaround. Oh my God.
Yes.
I almost forgot about that. That was insane.
Yeah. And then, but quick little tidbit. I did like some fun fact reading as well, that when the Illinois Nazi car that I think like Pinto wagon or whatever it is, like drove off and they like flew up in the air, parts of the skyline were actually from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
What?
Yep.
That's crazy.
So love that scene when they fall forever. And the guy sitting next to him says like, I just want you to know I love you. But the part that got me so good, I'm expecting like an explosion from that car. No, I love how it just goes straight through the ground. Just a hole in the pavement. I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
It goes through the street to the under street.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so good. So
like that's sorry. Oh, but like those are the special effects, you know, to me, you know, like, you know, there's just a car flying through the air. This is the 1970s that you have, you know, you can maybe do some layering in film or something like that, but it's not, you know, going into post and just doing CGI. So like, no, they probably had to throw, you know, a car on a helicopter and just like drop it near the Meets airfield or wherever it was to like make that effect. So, you know, I don't know how many like cars they went through on top of the cop cars that they also destroyed. So like just budget,
so many,
throw it out the window because, you know, we need the effects and we need them in camera. So,
so what you mentioned, budget, let me see if I can find that. This was actually the most expensive movie ever made at the time.
Really?
So the most expensive movie ever made. I'm sure the cars had something to do with that, but yeah. So kind of what Adam was saying. Well, kind of what we've all been saying, but I'm jumping. So I'm going last. I'll go ahead and give my score. I actually gave the editing and special effects for this a 5. Because it's all practical effects. It's all in-camera stuff. And it is so good. All of it. And even now, it wasn't until Adam's sitting there going, yeah, this was shot in like the 70s and there was a car falling from the sky, that I realized I didn't even question that fact watching the movie. Watching the movie, I didn't go, ooh, that looks rough. I was like, hey, they're falling a really long time. Like, I was in it. It was effective. They did a great job with that. So that, I love the miniature use for the explosion. But a world record 103 cars were wrecked during filming.
Jeez.
Wow.
So that's insane. But also, a majority of that is a giant police crash at the end. But we haven't even talked about one of my favorite parts of the movie is the mall chase.
Yeah.
When they do a police chase through the mall, and they're crashing into everything, and it looks so good. It's so cool. There's a lot of awesome camera work in that. John Landis could shoot a chase, but I love the dry humor in that scene when they're running from the police through the mall, and it's just, Pier 1 Imports. I just think it's so funny. It is so funny.
Didn't they like rent out like a mall? Like it's a mall, like I think either on the west side of the city or something like that. I think now sits abandoned or was demolished, but like it was already abandoned at the time, and so
really?
They just used the mall and they just wrecked it. Yeah. So, and with like permits and all, but I thought that was like, like cool.
Actually, there is a reasonable special effect in this film. It's when the brothers are at the church and James Brown's going off with the band and the light comes through and you see that light effect. That is like the special effect of the film, pretty much, is just that light and him being like, and it's engulfed in like, just going off, starts dancing just as a flip,
The dance, yeah.
So I said it was one of the most expensive films ever made. At the time, it cost $30 million, which seems very small compared to today's budgets for movies. But by comparison, Steven Spielberg's most recent movie at that time was 1941, and it cost $35 million. So it was right up there. It was one of the most expensive. It was even rumored that Landis and Spielberg engaged in a rivalry, the goal of which was to make the most expensive film. They eventually had a falling out from the Twilight Zone movie. John Landis and Spielberg were buddies, but I don't know if you've ever seen the Twilight Zone movie from 1983 or heard about it. It was on the Cursed Films documentary. This is one of the dark parts about John Landis. We were going to save it for direction, but he pushed his segment in Twilight Zone so hard it led to the death of multiple actors on set during filming. And so after that, Spielberg and Landis split. Spielberg was like, nope, done. But anyways, but yeah, it was a hugely expensive movie. Most cars wrecked. And that chase scene is just fantastic. So I actually, on this film, I gave the effects and editing a 5. If it were the alternative cut, the director's cut, Jonathan, I would have been down a 4.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Yeah.
But that's like, because I watched that one first, I was like, man, this is kind of choppy. And then I watched the theatrical and I was like, oh, that's why. This is the stuff that wasn't in the theatrical. And that's why, like, some of the color grading, I could tell the color grading would be different from scene to scene. And I was like, oh, it's just not as cleaned up as the theatrical. But the theatrical cut is very nicely done.
I also want to say I like the scene that's coming up behind you where the Illinois Nazis are on the bridge. In my cut, in the unrated version, they try to run them off the bridge. I don't remember if they do that in the original cut.
They successfully do. That's why they chase them down.
I remember when they're saying like where they went through the water or something in the car. I don't know. Yeah. But,
I don't know about that. I don't remember that.
The Nazis jump off the bridge into the water.
Okay.
That's the cut that I've watched, but I have like
that's what you saw. Okay, I said the same thing. Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't have the innocent version. Yeah. It was a lot crazier. But yeah, I was at a 3 on mine.
Okay. Hey, I came out ahead on that one.
I'm in the middle as a 4.
All right. So the script for this.
Script. Everything with script was well paced in just like some of the way some of the comedy was written with the jokes. between Jake and Elwood, and then like how they interact with everybody else was pretty awesome to me. It's not so much a dialogue part of script, but what I saw when they're at the orphanage and they're talking to Sister Mary Stigmata, or the Penguin, as she's called. She has that yardstick, and like she whacks the one for cursing, and then like the one's like, Jesus Christ, smack, God, smack, no blasphemy, and he's like, God damn, oh, son, bitch, yeah, son. And she's just like, she's just smacking the shit out of the both of them, and finally comes over, just like, oh, whack, and like breaks her stick over his head. I'm like, yes, crazy Catholics, oh my goodness, just going wailing away at it, but I thought that was cool. There's a lot of like the smaller lines, like you had said earlier, like, oh, look at that, it's 9 a.m., time to go to work. You know, there's absurdity in a lot of different little lines throughout the film that they make me kind of crack a grin and a little smile and just like, you goofy bastards, you know, just it's a lot of like small bit stuff, and then like so a little bit of shtick here and there, but it's placed so well throughout the film. So the way they wrote it out to have it placed in certain parts, I think, was really good.
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, like for the scripting, like I mentioned it earlier, just like it's so quotable, like the film is, that you know everything that they say. Like I literally have a list of all the quotes of the film. Like my favorite and probably most popular, it's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark and we're wearing sunglasses. Jake says, hit it. Like that is so like iconic. And it's also like well placed because, you know, they're in a dark alleyway in their car, sunglasses on. You're like, you know, this was written, you know, as a comedy, but at the same time, you're like, what? You know, and then like there's other things. We're on a mission from God, just like the use of the quotes can really guide the movie along, on top of like the writing and the planning of the scenes that, like, you know, I said earlier, they kind of move through the film instead of being like, you know, flash forward, flashback, you know, middle, flashback kind of thing. It just moves along. So you get a sense that, you know, they're moving along, they're getting the band together, and just moving through their paces. And then they, you know, got their whole squad, and then they go to the Palace Hotel ballroom. That is the final goal that we reach, you know, like pre-apex, before the actual apex. And then, you know, and they play and you feel so good. It's like, yes, we're going to get the money. And then there's like, actually, you know, and that we still have to go downtown kind of thing. And so just it, you know, all stacks on top of each other, I guess you can say. And it makes you feel so much more involved that you say, hey, I know this person from there, or like these people actually, you know, they're from the restaurant, the bar, and like I see them further in the film. So there's like call backs and things like that. That you can then reference. So it's like all written in the sense that it's easy to follow, and then you can get the jokes as you know, get older or you rewatch the film. It's rewatchable too. So it's just, you know, all in all, a very well thought out script as a comedy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah. I want to say one other thing. I almost forgot. I really like how they wrote up the scene for when they go to Shea Paul to get their horn guy back, and he's like the maitre d' and everything. The way they walk in there, the way they sit down and like start just with the crude manners and everything, it made me think of Terrence Spencer and Bud Hill from Old Spaghetti Western, from their second Trinity film, They Still Call Me Trinity, where they do the same kind of thing. They just go in, they're abrupt, and they're just the crude manners and everything, like that whole bit. Seen that in a few other films, and I'm just like, I really like that. And then when like they're trying to talk to their guy to convince him to come back to the band, how Jake just goes over to the other table, the guy who's offended because they smell. He's like, hey, how much for your wife? How much for your daughters? He's like just freaking out, like, oh my God. That's like such an amazing scene. And the way they wrote that, I thought was fantastic. Oh my God. They just kept being so crude until this guy's like, all right, fine, I'll join you guys. God,
I just think it's so funny that they sit down and he's like, 5 shrimp cocktails.
It's a bread for my brother.
And that's because it's not 5 chickens he orders later; it's 4.
Well, I was at the diner with Aretha.
Yeah, that's later. But
chickens and a Coke.
Do you have fried chicken?
Elwood.
This guy wants plain white toast. Elwood.
Yeah.
There's
He's in the background. He's like, is it really them?
Yeah. And 4 fried chickens. Jake.
Because it also gives you that sense that, like, in that scene where, they have their order, you can tell that they know them very well, even though they've been gone for however many years, that, like, the duo hasn't been back together, or the band hasn't been back together. So it's like implied that, like, they know, of course, they're like getting the band together, but, like, with those little things, it's, oh, Elwood.
Yeah.
Jake. And, then Matt proceeds to try to convince Aretha Franklin that, oh, hey, I need to go with the band. And then she's like, think. And, also, putting the song titles and, like, what the song is, like, about. And then like skewing it to put it into the film, that's like, you better think what you're about to do. Hey, like things like that. But putting it to, are you going to go with the band, or are you going to, like, stay with me, instead of, like, think, I forgot the original premise of the song off the top of my head, but I imagine that's like, what are you doing with me yeah.
She says right before she starts singing it that there are consequences to your actions. You better think. And then goes into the song.
They wrote the songs into the story pretty well.
Yes, all of them.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. I just talked around.
It definitely, the script though definitely reminds me of SNL. So it's clear that these were SNL guys, SNL writers and characters. Not Belushi. Aykroyd has said he never wrote a script before this. Never wrote a movie script. That's kind of where John Landis came in and helped, because Landis, Aykroyd, and Belushi wrote this movie. And so I feel like Landis kind of helped thread those SNL sketches together, and that's why they have such a sketch setup. It is this scene, here's the gag, move on to the next scene. Like I said, that's not really a knock on it. It's just the structure of this film, and it's back when SNL was funny, so it's good. I couldn't go.
I'm not going to argue that.
So the script and the acting, I had a hard time, because there are little things in this movie that I want to know if they were improv from the actors or was it written into the script. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to bump my score for the script a little bit, because I also have to dock the acting. So I'll get to that on the acting. But what, like, little things like the first lines of Jake are when he's in the car and he's complaining about what'd you do with the Bluesmobile, and he's trying to light his cigarette and the lighter doesn't work. And just the little movement of him just tossing it out the window is something that I found that very funny. And just little things like that. Or is it in the script when he's picking up his stuff after getting out of jail that he stands behind that line and he leans all the way across to sign his name? Like, is that his improv of, like, this is how I'm going to do the scene? Or is that like, hey, do this in the script? That's what I don't know. I'm going to give that credit to the script, because there's a lot of just little motions, little things in this that are really good. This probably is written in there, but when they're at the assessor's office at the end and it says back in 5 minutes, and we've just had this huge chase, and they see that sign that says back in 5 minutes, and they just stand there and wait. They're just like, all right, they're coming up the stairs.
And they do the hand thing. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Jake doesn't do it right, and Elwood's like showing him, like, he's like, okay.
Yeah. So there are things like that I'm going to say it's part of the script. So I give the script a 4.
I give the script a 3.
I gave the script a 4 as well.
All right. So then acting.
Acting is awesome. I like the delivery, from your main characters and delivery by even like the B characters, your smaller bits and the musicians who actually acted in the film. Everyone was awesome. Aretha Franklin, she's just this diner. She's got her man. She's not letting him go. She's like, boy, you about to mess up, and then Ray Charles, with his music shop, still like trying to be like, yeah, this stuff works. Don't bullshit me. It's not crap. Let me show you, la, 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 like a good music shop owner would, trying to sell that product and everything. And like even the bar, like all the small bit parts, like, but I mean, those dudes from the Good Old Boys, these guys, dude, obnoxious, gnarly. And seeing them get their little camper truck flipped over with the bar owner and get just wrecked with the cops, I'm like, yes, dude, that was so awesome. And the cops like, yeah, you guys messed up. You messed up big time. I'm like, yeah. What gets me though, like when you see them chasing Jake and Elwood in their little camper truck thing, 4 guys from the band are in the upper tiny little slit thing above the cab of the truck. And it's like, yo, those dudes just got wrecked. I should have brought this up in the special effects stuff. But yeah, they wrecked that truck. It's like, how are those dudes alive? How are they stepping out of that thrashed camper when they were right there in the top, all smushed together like 4 fucking fat guy sausages in the top of that? Like, bro, those dudes would have been annihilated. Oh my God. But everyone who was supposed to be who got kind of punked by Jake and Elwood, they did a good job of being buttholes. John Candy is this Department of Corrections guy. Like, he acts like kind of throws his weight around like he's like a big guy, but it's like, dude, you're Department of Corrections. You're not an actual police officer. Like, you're just there kind of along the ride with them. But he's like, oh yeah, let's get 3 orange whips over here. Oh yeah, let's start drinking while we're
basically a mall security guard.
Something like that, I guess, man. Like, dude, it's whack. But I really like the acting mostly from a lot of the side characters, man. Like Kathleen Freeman as the Penguin, Curtis, there's all these other people that you see that they interact with are pretty rad. And James Brown, man, like James Brown didn't really have to act. He was just doing a performance, man. He was just a church robe on, but just still doing his thing and being awesome. Like see some of these performances when it's not acting, it's just like a straight music performance. Yeah, you got to remember, like you can treat it like it's both, but it's still cool, regardless of how you think of it. But aside from that, man, I liked what everyone did. I would have liked to have seen a little more out of Elwood as a character. Like I said, he was always so quiet a lot of the time. I think it would have been cool if he had a few more lines, maybe a few more little jokes in there. But maybe the point was for him to be quiet and subtle. So it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I'll pass it on to you, Adam. Have at it.
Yeah, like going off of that point, I actually think that Elwood should have been quieter. You have Jake, who's like the lead singer. He is, the head of the band. He did what he did and went to jail and all that. So he's kind of the main act. He had his part where he's in the church. He's like, the band, Elwood, we got to get the band back together. Like, he is leading more so than Elwood. Elwood's just kind of, he plays his harmonica, he drives the car. So I would say he's more of like a supporting role to like kind of argue my point.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. He does make more of a main character versus Elwood. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but going to the rest of the acting and characters, like the acting, at least from the musicians, was pretty good for them being, like musicians. Of course, they, perform live. They're in the studio. They do all that. But like to be in a movie and have to like do a scene and then redo it and then have the same quality over and over rather than just doing it live in one sweep, like that takes practice. Like that's why there's actors and there's, everyday Joes that sometimes have an extra in a film. Like, for example, the entire Palace Hotel ballroom that just had a bunch of people sitting in the audience. Like we just like discredit that, but like at the same time, that's all real people that they kind of put in as extras. on top on that. But diving a little bit deeper, you have the Illinois Nazis and people, they really have that, very quiet kind of thing, or demeanor, or things like that, where they're just so mad, or they want to you can tell that they're mad and that they're not happy in the film. And then, like Jonathan said, John Lee Hooker and people like that, where they it's okay, in my opinion. It's not whoa, but without them in the film and their acting, you would notice. It would just be like an average Joe making a film.
Yeah.
So average podcast, average Joe. Great joke.
You'll
actually find some of those if you search for us.
Yeah. So all in all, we saved the ratings until later, but
yes,
yes, I noticed that trend, but that theme, but yeah, it was good. It got the point across. It wasn't stellar, in my humble opinion.
Okay. So I think this movie is one that it's not about the acting. It's about the music. This movie is about the music. And that when you put this many musicians who aren't actors into a movie, I don't expect the acting to be great across the board. So they're awesome to have in this movie. That doesn't mean their performances are Academy Award worthy, but they're good. They don't take away from the movie. So instead of adding more to what you guys said, I just want to point out the other cameos. We talked about music, but there's a lot of celebrities in this as well. They include Steve Lawrence, singer, comedian, actor from the pop duo Steve and Heidi, but he is the booking agent. Twiggy, who was a model at the time, as Chic Lady in the Jaguar convertible, whom Elwood propositions at the gas station. Steven Spielberg is the Cook County Assessor's clerk. The director, the director, John Landis, is the state trooper in the mall chase. Joe Walsh, guitarist, singer, songwriter, the guy from the Eagles. So he's from the band The Eagles, is the first prisoner to jump up on the table in the final scene. Chaka Khan,
I saw that.
American singer, Queen of Funk. She's in the film. Legendary performer Frank Oz plays a corrections officer. Who else?
Paul Rubens was a waiter.
From Iggy Doll, who is a stunt coordinator. Singer-songwriter Stephen Bishop is a state trooper. He did some songs for National Lampoon's Animal House, which also was a Landis movie. There's a makeup artist in there. But then the other one that this makes total sense now. I didn't realize it was him in the moment. But the Chez Paul waiter, who has one spoken line and comes up and says, "We have Dom Perignon, 71," is Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens.
Paul Rubens, baby, yeah!
So it's stacked. There's so much in this film. That being said, I don't think any of the performances are super incredible. They're good. They serve their part. They do what they need to, and they're not distracting. So I'm a 3 on the acting.
Okay, I'm a 4 on the acting, and one thing I will say I really also thought was awesome: the guys in the band weren't playing characters; they were starring as themselves.
Okay, that is something I was trying to look up because I wasn't clear. I couldn't tell if the names they were putting up in the movie were their real names or their character names, and they were just pretending they were real, because they would put those guys' names up like in the credits, but then they also put up like Jake and Elwood. And I was like, well, I know those guys.
Those two, yeah, those were definitely the characters, but everybody else in the band were themselves. Okay. Willie Hall, the drummer, Willie Too Big Hall, their bass player, Donald Duck Dunn. It's just Donald Dunn. Mm-hmm. Steve Cropper, or the Colonel, Murph. All those dudes, they played themselves.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, 4 on acting for me. Yeah.
Like Cab Calloway, too. Like,
oh, dude, yeah.
Even though he was older. Yeah, like he played himself. Literally sang his own song.
Yeah.
Well, he was Curtis in the film, but still.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing what he did, though, like the performance was still kicked ass. Big time.
So 3 and then 4s?
4 for me.
All right. So on to direction. I know Jonathan always has a ton to say about this one.
Direction, I don't know, all the different scenes and the chases and everything, there's just a lot, dude. And if I was going to say anything about direction, it's just being how they coordinated all those different aspects of the car chase through Chicago. Man, the way they chained all that out, the planning that must have gone into that, and like trying to get like the best camera angles safely. Because some of those shots, man, are like from under the L, coming up and around and over side, and like all these different tight shots. And then you get like all of the like the shots that are on the front of a car through those chases and those tight spots, man. The way they planned all that out just was super, super, super awesome. And then, I don't know, I just like the way everything else is at. And go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, like the directing, like the directing in the film was, great. And like, pun intended, the direction that film took was also great. But like saying the car chase, you had the front of the like the front of the camera and stuff, as well as like helicopter shots. I'm assuming they did a helicopter shot when like the army guys were going up the building. Unless that was a dolly shot, I don't really know, but like that had to be coordinated. Cars had to be coordinated. How do you get 5 or 9 cars to then crash how you want them to crash, and so that you still preserve the Dodge that the Blues Brothers had, the Bluesmobile? Mm-hmm. Like that had to take some skill there. And then they had the moving through the tunnel, like that one scene of like moving through the tunnel where they're like hiding from, I think it was Carrie Fisher, was it? Or no, they were hiding from the cops from when they booby trapped all their cars and stuff. Yeah. And they had the speaker on, and on top of that, just planning where they were going to go, Calumet City, they went to the abandoned the mall and everything. Like that was all very well planned and thought out and, directed, and like where everything happened in my view. So
yeah,
passing it off to Tim, because I will talk.
So off of what you're saying, filming in downtown Chicago was conducted on Sundays during the summer of '79, and much of downtown was cordoned off from the public. The cost of filming the largest scene in the city's history, it was about $3.5 million in 1979 dollars. $3.5 million to film just in Chicago. Permission was only given after Belushi and Aykroyd offered to donate $50,000 to charity. And then permission was given. Okay. Although the Bluesmobile was not allowed to be driven through the Daily Center lobby, special breakaway panes were temporarily substituted instead of normal glass. but the car still caused $7,650 in damage to 35 granite paver stones and a bronze grill in the building. So that's just a little bit like they went all out for this. But Landis is kind of a legend. So, but he's not, you don't hear his name spoken in the realms of Spielberg or, you mentioned him earlier, Nolan. He's not that guy. But he did the Kentucky Fried Movie in 77, National Lampoon's Animal House in 78, which was right before this, and that's a legendary film. Trading Places in 83, The Three Amigos, Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop 3, but as I said, An American Werewolf in London is a classic. It's my favorite werewolf movie. It's amazing. He also directed Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Right, he did.
Yeah. So this guy, he went on to work with television, the early HBO series Dream On, which was really good. I don't know why it's not on Max right now. I saw the first season years ago, but he did the TV version of Weird Science as well. So the dude's a bit of a legend. He did get in a lot of trouble when 3 actors, including 2 children, died on set during Twilight Zone, the movie. There were other parties involved, but he was tried and acquitted for involuntary manslaughter. They were just didn't have safety standards in place. A helicopter crashed and chopped the actors up. It's awful. I encourage strongly, if you subscribe to Shudder, there is a series, or AMC Plus, there's a series called Cursed Films, and each episode talks about, like The Exorcist was cursed or whatever. It talks about different things that happen on movies, The Crow being one of them. But it goes into this Twilight Zone movie, and it was heart-wrenching. Like, some of them are like, oh, this stuff goes on set, it's a cursed film. And then there was the Twilight Zone movie where 2 children died, and it is so sad. It was a tough one to watch. So he is kind of wrapped up in that controversy, but he was acquitted. I think it was probably his special effects coordinators that weren't making sure things were safe. He is the director, though, so where's that culpability lie? So didn't really do much else outside of that. He's still fairly active, I think. I don't know exactly how much, but his years listed as active are still ongoing. So he's signed to direct a streaming series called Superhero Kindergarten. So he's still doing stuff as of 2020. But his early stuff is 70s and 80s comedy flagships and tent poles that people hold up to this day. National Lampoon, Trading Places, Coming to America, Three Amigos, Blues Brothers.
Three Amigos!
Yeah, those movies are legendary status. So I actually, what did I give the direction for this film? I gave it a 4 because it's really solid across the board. Putting together scenes like a car chase in a mall and making it work is impressive. That's impressive to me. So,
especially with all those people and none of them getting hurt. Jeez.
Yeah. But also this mall felt huge. I wouldn't think you could, a feasible car chase could exist this long inside of a building, but I don't question it in the way he structured the movie. It worked. So that is impressive to me. I almost debated a 5, honestly, because it's just, I put pacing issues is why it's not a 5 for me, but it's a 4. I was impressed.
I was in a 3.
And I was in a 4. I'll double check my card.
Yes, you were.
I had a 4.
All right,
okay.
so the
Yay!
cultural significance, the it factor for this film.
Dude, so with it, of course, being cult classic status, that definitely says a lot in that, in and of itself. When a film is considered a cult classic, that means there is a huge following that's well known worldwide, most likely. And with being the Blues Brothers, that is something that is known culturally worldwide. You go to like Japan, and you'll find people who will have that same style, will stand around like kind of like how the guys like those rockabilly group dudes who do the same kind of thing. It's a style, it's a thing that people follow in a lot of different circles. You go to probably like a Comic-Con, you'll probably see somebody dressed up like Blues Brothers. It's an easy costume you can put together, and everyone's going to know what it is when they see you wearing it. They're like, "Oh, Blues Brothers. Okay. Yeah. 2 guys, black suits, sunglasses." Everyone's going to know that look. You cannot forget it. They've held 25th anniversaries, all kinds of different special things. It's kind of hard not to know Blues Brothers unless you've been very religiously restricted growing up. It happened.
That was me. Yep.
Yeah, right. I've been there myself in certain parts of life. Yeah, but it's something that has a lot of notoriety. So I think this one holds a lot of power when it comes to it factor.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree as well, but when it comes to cultural significance, it would be more local, I would say, like to Chicagoland area would be
You think so?
Top notch. Yeah. Like here, I'm based out in Nashville. So like people know of the film, with my coworkers, I talk about it quite often, but like people know of it, but they don't know like individual like scenes. They can quote some things, but it's not, like I tell them, "Oh, the Blues Brothers," and they go, "Who?" But if you say it in Chicagoland, you have people that have replica cars of the Bluesmobile. They have, they know exactly who John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd are. They know, you tell them the Palace Hotel Ballroom. Most of the time they'll know what that is. I don't think the Palace Hotel Ballroom exists anymore, does it? I don't think so.
I have no idea.
Or maybe it has been like rebuilt or something like that.
Well, I can tell you in a second
original.
because I was just reading about that. But Go ahead.
Yeah. So
It's now the South Shore Cultural Center.
Oh,
okay. But you have, and then Chicago people and around Chicago, you have, you can pinpoint the Daily Plaza. You can pinpoint the L, like we were talking about earlier. You can pinpoint Lower Wacker Drive, or what used to be, I think it was Meets Airfield before it was broken up and things like that. So for people around, we know those areas, and so we can pinpoint. It's that is awesome. But if you tell somebody, in Japan, for example, they're like, I know that it's Chicago, but I don't know those places. So it won't be that wow factor. It'll be more so, like Jonathan said, the suits and the glasses, and maybe, actual blues being played. It would be more significant there. So I think it's just a different shift looking at that people from Chicago would look at it more like, whoa, this is, me, probably my favorite movie of all time, because I can connect with it and all that. So I think it is, very significant, at least for the general area of Chicagoland, going north, south, west of the city. So
yeah,
I'm in Chicago.
So just interestingly enough, this film opened, I don't know exactly how many weeks, but Empire Strikes Back was in theaters when this film opened. So it opened to a second place spot behind Empire Strikes Back, which hard to blame it on that, because that's a huge movie. The film grossed $57 million domestically and $58 at the foreign. It was ranked 10th at the domestic box office for the year. By genre, it is the 9th highest grossing musical and the 10th highest earner among comedy road movies. It ranks second between Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 among films adapted from Saturday Night Live sketches.
I wanted to say, like, it maybe part of this made me think of Wayne and Garth a little bit in the whole Wayne's World kind of concept, and like the comedy with the bits of music mixed in.
Yeah. It received mostly positive reviews, including the rare 4 stars from Gene Siskel, who said it's one of the best. It is the best movie ever made in Chicago, according to him.
All right.
And it said it is technically superb. And I will say, it for me, one of the things that I like most about it is, like Adam was saying, I've been to most of those places. I've driven down some of those roads that car chase takes place on. I recognize a lot. I recognize locations from whether they're verbally spoken or we see them in the film. And it creates a connection with the film that I enjoy. I will say I had to come down a little bit on my score because I feel like this is a movie that is fading from the cultural discussion. I don't hear it talked about. And I think that's a shame. I do think a lot of it has to do with how dry this movie is. The comedy in this movie is plain white toast with no butter, no jam. It is dry as could be. And that is not the thing anymore. People aren't into that for their comedies.
No.
That shouldn't be a knock against it, but I get why not as many people would be into it. It is a different kind of comedy. And for me, myself, I had to watch this movie 3 times before this because I told you the first time I didn't finish it. Second time I liked it a lot. Third time I picked up so much more. And I think that's the type of movie this is. The more you watch it, the more you appreciate it, and that appreciation for it is going to grow. And so I think that kind of actually works against it. Because some people aren't going to be willing to give it a second shot. Some people might not even finish it the first time.
Yes.
So for me, my it factor, I gave it a 4 because it is one of those movies that I've heard about my entire life and people say, you need to see. So it's been there. It's a 4 for me.
All right. And I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm on a 4 as well.
I'm going to be that one dude and say I'm a top-notch 5 because of that, you know, I'm from Chicagoland. I like see all this, but you know, I'm kind of teetering though between a 4 and a 5 now that, that it's, you know, it's very localized that for me, like I'm very, I see this film as like, I'm from the area. I love it. And so like it might overshadow that love, might overshadow some other things that, you know, is like that. And it's the same thing for other films. Like, for example, big cult, not classic, but big cult film, The Room. Like, it's an awful film in my opinion, but like so many people like me in college, like we talked about that film like it was like a god, you know, like because it was.
Did you see The Disaster Artist?
Dude,
I saw a little bit of it.
The Disaster Artist is so good. It's so good. But you mentioned that. Ferris Bueller is one of those movies that it's a Chicagoland movie. My roommate when I was living there, Coach, you remember Sam? He knew somebody whose house is one of the yards that Ferris Bueller ran through in that movie, and he'd be like, "Yeah, My buddy Ferris ran through my buddy's yard in that movie. So like, it's just one of those things that being in that area is super cool. But anyways,
or like even Home Alone, you know, like the house is in Winnetka. Like I visited that place so many times, and I like showed all my cousins, friends, and everybody. That's like, you remember this house, you know? And I'm like proud of that. That's like, I know where this is, and I can just
bought
like
it not too long ago.
Yeah, it's an Airbnb.
Maybe.
Yeah,
it's an Airbnb now. It used to be a private residence, and like they closed it off because like they didn't want people walking on their.
Yeah, so it was purchased. It was for a period of time. I don't know if it still is. It was available to stay in on Airbnb. It was like thousands of dollars a night. But the catch is the inside has been completely remodeled to be like super modern, and everything's white and gray and ugly. And I'm like, nope, that's not the Home Alone house anymore. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, but
all right. So that moves us. How entertained were we? You can lead into your final score with that and wrap up your final. This is your final thoughts moment for it. So, Jonathan.
Well, yeah, for me, I'm sitting at an 8 for my entertainment. There was a lot of good comedy. Some of the dryness of it, some of the slapstick of it, you know, is my kind of thing. So I dig it quite a lot. It's definitely one I would recommend. You know, a lot of my friends that I grew up with, we all know this film, and we could talk bullshit about it all day if we wanted to. So I think this film has a lot of strong presence, and hopefully it won't die out. Like you were saying, that it might, you know, or as it seems to culturally with film relevance, hopefully you can get a resurgence. They made a sequel, and that was cool, you know, but, you know, they took some stretches on that. It'd be cool if there was a third, but who knows how that would turn out. That would probably be like super, 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 super hacky. But I think 8's good, though.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. I am and still am very entertained by the film. Like with my previous points that, you know, you could pick apart the film and notice a different thing every single time you watch it. I mean, that could be true with a lot of other films, but for this one, you know, the different things that happen in it, the quotes, like you can attribute quotes to different things in the film that you didn't think of previously, you know? And I think that's pretty hard for some films because it's just like so cut and dry that like this person says this and it doesn't apply to anything else, you know, but in the Blues Brothers, like it does. And so I rated this, no surprise here, a 10 out of 10 because like I said earlier, just so easy to follow. And, you know, it's one of those films, like Jonathan said, you can just talk about it with like your friends that have also watched the film, and you can crap on it. You can, you know, say all this, but at the end of the day, you still watch it and you're like, nice. This is a great performance on this scene. This is great here. And, you know, you leave the film. It's one of those where you watch it, you know what's going to happen, but you still watch it anyways, because that is just great fun. It's just a fun film, and you can just go back to it and keep going back to it instead of some of them where you watch it. Great. Glad that I watched it. This was a hard movie to watch. Thanks. Bye. Blues Brothers, not that. You can just keep rewatching it and be entertained.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I kind of already said, I think this is a movie that gets better with repeated watches. So for me, I actually, each time I watched it, my how entertained were you has gone up. First time, it was like a 5. I wasn't feeling it. Yep. Second time, it went up a little bit. Third time, I'm at a 7. So I'm getting there. I'm not quite all the way there, but each time I've watched it, I was 5, then I was 6, then I was 7 up. And it's growing into something that, yeah, I do want to see it again. You know, but first time I watched it, I was like, I don't want to watch this again. And then I did. And I was glad I did. I thought it was much better the second time. So, yeah, I look forward to watching this. And like Adam says, I do think it's a movie where you'll pick up on those little things, like the first time. What did I notice? Never mind, I forgot. So you start to notice things on repeated watches that you didn't catch, and that makes the movie that much better. So I fully expect my entertainment value on this to go up the more times I see this film. I do. So I was a 7. That puts my final score at a 39, which would be rounded to 4 stars out of 5.
Oh, wow. I actually came in at a 38.
Whoa.
So you went up on me. Okay.
I'm a little surprised.
Nice. I came up as a 42.
42.
So
if we do our thing and we average what the 3 of us think, that is a 39.67 or a 4 out of 5 stars. And that is the idea of that is averaging multiple people's opinion to give you an idea of if this movie works in a crowd or a social setting. This is a movie that is probably better to watch with some people, but also know your audience. I think people who appreciate music and old school comedy are going to appreciate this more than random movie. You know, if their favorite movie is The Hangover, maybe skip this one.
I think it's also like the age and like who you talk to, like Tim said, that like, for example, me and like at work or like my friends, you know, like we're younger, we're like, you know, early 20s kind of vibe. And so like if I bring it up in like a group setting like that, you know, they usually like brush it off and just like heard of the film. Cool, you know, there's other stuff that's there. But if I bring it up to an older crowd, like, you know, for example, my parents kind of deal, and you know, where they have an understanding of that time, you know, like maybe 80s, 90s kind of deal, and like they understand the film. You know, it's easier to talk to because they're like, oh, hey, yeah, like loved this, love that, love X, Y, and Z. It's so much easier to talk to those kind of peeps. And
yeah,
I'm the older peep in this group discussion. I'm 41, bro. So I'm like in your parents' group there.
Yeah, my brother doesn't watch anything after 2005, and he's missing out. Most of what I watch is from pre-1996, so that's what I've been watching.
Well, fascinating that you bring that up, because The Blues Brothers is one of the oldest films that I watch. Like, you know, there's like the like Disney classics, but you know, it's a Disney classic. And so, but like for like a, I guess, proper film or things like that, or, you know, like 2000s, like that's maybe the oldest film that I've watched. But because it was introduced to me by, you guessed it, my parents, like I probably would not pick up the Blues Brothers and be like, hey, I'm going to watch this. Like, it's because my parents played it. And then I recall, oh, hey, there's a DVD. I remember I watched this when I was like 8. So I like put it back in, and then I'm like, I like this, and then put it back in another time, another one. So like, that's what got me in, the older, you know, crowd.
Yep.
Bro, I would recommend go watch some Marx Brothers films. Go a little further back. Go hit some black and white. Go watch some old school film. Check out Duck Soup by Marx Brothers. Watch that. I watched that growing up with my mom, dude, and like that was some like the early comedy that I got into as a child.
I often say, I'll tell people that like when it comes to modern day sarcasm as humor, there are 2 sources that I think really were the pioneers for modern sarcasm turning into comedy. Number 1 was the Marx Brothers. So
Groucho Marx, man. Groucho.
Yep, Groucho especially.
Like, he is cutting humor. Awesome.
Duck Soup is fantastic. But the other one that I attribute for that kind of humor, and it's also, he did a Groucho Marx impression very often, was MASH. The MASH TV show was very sarcastic. It was very good. But any final thoughts on this? We can wrap this up. That's it for the Blues Brothers.
Was anybody else creeped out by the Jesus on the cross right by the top of the stair at the Penguin's office at the orphanage.
Bit,
the way it's hanging there, just ominously right off the side of the stairway.
You know, I love that little horror element. And is it not expanded in the director's cut? Like the door swings open on its own, swings closed on its own. It's a little bit creepier in the director's cut.
Yeah,
it was great.
Like for me, like I mentioned earlier, probably in the episode, I don't really Halloween or horror anything. So, and this is magnified by the fact that I absolutely don't do anything with paranormal at all. And to combine that with nuns, I will note myself out of the room so fast. So like the only thing that keeps me in the chair during that scene is the fact that I know it's a comedy and I know what happens. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss Chicago. I gotta get back there again soon. Go visit some family, hit my food spots. That's one of the things I was watching for throughout the family was like, the movie was food spots, like the different restaurants and the Chicago dog spots. I'm like, man, there's a Maxwell Street, whatever.
All right.
It kind of changed, but it didn't change. So
I think that covers it, guys. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Huge thanks to Adam for joining us. It was awesome having you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And for those who missed the intro, Adam is the genius behind the original theme for both of our 13 Nights of Halloween series. So Adam, where can people find more of your music?
They can find me on all streaming platforms. My artist name is CMP Music, pretty much camp without the A. And you can find me everywhere: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Deezer even, you can find me there. I'm primarily electronic music, but I make, lo-fi and the sorts. So you can pretty much find a little bit of everything.
Nice.
And you can find him with custom songs at the beginning of every 13 Nights of Halloween episode that we did. We contacted him for that music. I was going to try to show it on my Apple Music, but I can't pull it up right now.
That's okay.
Yeah. So seriously, go check out his work. We used to play it. I remember we used to include it on our swim team playlists. Get you some plays in there.
Yeah.
A couple cents every listen.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your total score in the comments. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Wherever you listen, we're there.
And remember, movies are more than just what's on screen. They're the conversations we have after the credits roll.
So keep the dialogue going, share your thoughts, and let's turn every movie night into something unforgettable.
This is The Average, where the real review happens with your friends. See you next time.